Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by very good friend of the show, Kevin Logan. Kevin, it's also a very special day for you, isn't it?
It is. It's my 38th birthday, massive landmark, as I'm sure we all can tell. And what a present to spend some time with Curtis.
Well, I'm glad I can be the gift, the best gift for your birthday, actually, I might
See,
say.
I need to not do the line now about unwrapping you because that we're just too homoerotic, really.
Well, you said it now, haven't you? So it's
Well,
already
I have
there.
said it. You know, I
It's,
did.
it's,
Yeah.
it's there in the public on the internet for everyone to see. So we've got it. We've got a really good show. There's 4 stories actually today. We're going to try and blast through them because we've got a time limit, but we're gonna have some really good analysis from Kev. So coming up on tonight's show, jailed wife of Tory councillor denied appeal. Labour agrees to a trade deal with the EU, and also Labour are to put sanctions on Israeli settlers. And then the Independent blames Corbyn for Starmer's complicity in genocide. As always, remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. Help us reach our goal of 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We'll be getting to your comments at the end, so please make sure you are very busy in the chat. But we're going to move on to our first story. Lucy Connelly, the wife of a Tory councillor, has appealed her sentence after she was jailed for 31 months for inciting violence during the race riots last year. Her appeal was denied. In a written judgment, Lord Justice Holroyd said there is no arguable basis on which it could be said that the sentence imposed by the judge was manifestly excessive. The application for leave to appeal against the sentence therefore fails and is refused. During a hearing last Thursday at the Court of Appeal, she said that she never intended to incite violence and did not realise pleading guilty would mean she accepted that she had. Many people, especially on the right, are outraged by this, from saying this is excessive to outright calling her a political prisoner. But note the last sentence in that graphic, right? The court came to the conclusion that she did incite violence, and then she pled guilty on it. She admitted herself during the trial that was the case. Now she's saying, well, I didn't know I was admitting to guilt. So either she had terrible lawyers or she's changed her mind. But regardless, once a trial is completed, you don't get to do do-overs. Now, look, I would say I'm a pretty, pro-free speech guy. But this was literal incitement. She called on people to burn hotels with children inside. And some people are trying to twist it that, she didn't say you should go and do it. She just said, I don't care if it happens. But again, as I said, the courts came to the conclusion that she was inciting violence and she pled guilty. She admitted to it. Now, maybe there's a question about the length of the sentence, but what she did was incredibly dangerous. Kevin, I want to get your thoughts on the appeal being denied. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I this is not surprising to me at all, really. I did, on a personal level, think that the original sentence was possibly a little excessive, but I mean, she is literally the wife of a Tory councillor, and the Tories already did this by changing the idea that the law was blind during the 2011 protests, where they threw the book at them completely. There was no nuance here. If you're involved in this kind of thing, you get the kind of maximum type sentences. So I don't think she's got real legs to stand on that one. And of course, what she did was enormously dangerous. She did call directly for violence against migrants, ethnic minorities in these hotels. I don't think she can have a leg to stand on in terms of defending herself on that. And also, the idea that she's now turning around and saying that I didn't understand that pleading guilty would mean I was saying I was guilty is ludicrous. Like, do you take us for fools? Do you take us for children? Like, obviously, you knew exactly what this was. It would have been explained to you by your lawyers. And you're an adult. Just the basic concept of if you plead guilty, that means you are accepting that you are guilty of the thing of which you are accused. Pretty straightforward. It's not exactly a particularly complex jurisprudence on this one. She's got no leg to stand on. In terms of the right wing's reaction to this, it just goes to show you again, as we've, I think, mentioned many times, that the right wing have this understanding of legality, which is that they want laws that apply to everybody else, but not themselves. They don't want to have to live by the rules. The rules are there to protect them against everybody else and to infringe upon everybody else, but not them specifically. It's the American thing of "don't tread on me," taken literally. Don't tread on me. You can tread on everyone else, just not me specifically. The right wing are genuinely unhinged in this country, and this is a perfect example of it.
I mean, do you think that at the time, given sort of the trial, she may have felt guilty, may have felt like what she did was wrong? So at the time, she pled guilty. And now, ever since, there have been people on the outside calling her a political prisoner and the right-wing pushback. Do you think it's almost given her courage to stand up and say, I mean, stand up as if she's not courageous, she's a coward, but I mean, it's given her the confidence to turn around and say, oh, actually, no, maybe I wasn't guilty. Do you think that she was a bit more sincere before? Because obviously, you know, if you're facing trial, you're going to be scared, and maybe she thought maybe I was wrong. But then, of course, since then, you've had the grifters trying to back her up, and maybe she saw that and went, actually, maybe I'm not sorry.
Yeah. Firstly, she should have felt guilty because she is in fact
Yeah.
guilty, pretty damned obviously so. Um, and yeah, there's no doubt that the right wing have used this as a kind of, or tried to make this into a blue touch moment for their culture war nonsense. Because again, anything to avoid talking about economics or material conditions of working class people, of course. Yeah, they've tried to use her as a kind of grifting point, and she may indeed herself trying to set up a future grift of her own within this. But in terms of the legality of it, in terms of the actual appeal, as you pointed out, you don't get to do a do-over. You can't change how you plead after the case. You can change during the case in theory, but you can't do it after the case. You've pled guilty, you accepted therefore responsibility, you get your sentence and you do your time. Very simple and straightforward. They can whinge all they like, but this was handled correctly, and the justice system did its job, albeit imperfectly as always. It did its job basically as well as I think you could realistically hope it to.
To touch upon these right wingers, could you mention them? They're so appalled at the assault on free speech. Of course, they've never cared about free speech. You know, the "don't tread on me" was basically "don't tread on me, but we can tread on everyone else." It's free speech for me, not for thee. Where were they when the Just Stop Oil activists were jailed for 5 years, right?
Yep.
Not actually protesting, just talking about a protest on Zoom, which is wild,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What about the journalists who've had their homes ransacked for speaking up for Palestinians?
Yep.
Do you think these same people would hold the same position if a Muslim said something just as egregious?
Well, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. They are massive hypocrites. And again, it's don't tread on me. They want the ability to say absolutely everything with absolutely no pushback, and that doesn't just include legal pushback. That includes any pushback. You'll see this. This is why they have a go at cancel culture or cancelling people and all this sort of stuff. They don't just want free speech, as in the freedom to say what you want, and then the other person gets the freedom to say what they want. No. They want to be as offensive, as disgusting as they want to be, and you can't say anything to them. They want consequence-free speech, not free speech.
Fuck around and find out, basically.
Yeah, basically, absolutely, yeah. And it's so rare that you get this kind of middle-class white person ever face justice for anything other than the most obvious and blatant, very serious crime. And even then, they often get lighter sentences than other people. And so to see one instance where the kind of quote unquote justice that gets meted out to working class people, to left wing activists, as you pointed out with the Just Stop Oil people, or the ridiculous attempt to try and put terrorism charges on the remember the Colston statue thing in Bristol, just absurd overreaches of the legal system. And you don't hear a peep out of these people. They're absolutely fine with all of that, but you get one middle class Tory councillor's wife, and all of a sudden this is political persecution. This is the Gulags 2.0. It's absurdity. It really is. They don't live in the real world, these people.
Well, it feels quite relevant to bring up because my producers just let me know that Kneecap have been charged with terrorism. So in our private chat, we've got specifically, if I can find it. It's gone now. Here we go. So Liam Ohana, a member of the band's Kneecap, has been charged with a terrorism offence for allegedly displaying a flag supporting Hezbollah at a London gig. So allegedly, and it's a flag. Quite a far cry from inciting violence. But yeah, Kneecap, the band or the band member, has been charged with terror offences. I wonder if the same people are going to stand up for Kneecap.
I dare say they will not, because of course, again, they're massive hypocrites. We'll have to wait and see exactly how this kind of comes out in the wash. But I do just want to point out that the week after we were told how terrible it is that Kneecap had threatened members of Parliament, Lee Anderson, the member of Parliament, stood up and called for the violent expulsion of Jeremy Corbyn, the member for Islington North, from the UK. That's fine, though, apparently. Apparently, it's absolutely fine to do that because, again, it's one rule for me and another for thee.
Precisely. But we've got quite a lot to cover, so we are going to move on to our next story. Labour have agreed to a trade deal with the EU which gives easier access for UK exports. Travellers will be able to use e-gates at EU airports, and UK defence companies can bid for EU defence contracts. The big point of contention is fishing. The EU and UK have agreed to roll over the existing fishing deal for another 12 years until 2038, providing access to UK waters for EU fishers. Now, not only that, but the right-wing media have claimed that this is a return to freedom of movement, yet nothing in the deal suggests this. Some ministers have said that a youth mobility scheme could be looked at, meaning that those 30 or under will find it easier to live and work in EU nations that have signed up to Erasmus. But of course, the right wing have lost their minds at this, branding it as losing their Brexit freedoms. So this is the Daily Express on their front page. PM is hell-bent on selling out our Brexit freedoms. Wow. We've got one from Reform. They tweeted, Starmer has sold out Britain in favour of the EU. He can never be forgiven. And then they've got a nice little graphic there. Now, I saw this tweet from Nick Tyrone. Now, he's typically wrong, so I wouldn't usually platform this guy. But I thought this was actually quite an interesting perspective. The Brexiteer reaction to the EU deal might encourage pro-Europeans within Labour to become more aggressive. If the Brexiteers are just going to shriek betrayal about anything at all, why not go the whole hog and rejoin? If it's all the same to the Brexiteers, why not? And I do think he kind of has a point here. I don't think we should, be going back in the EU without some sort of referendum. But the right wing acts like everything is a Brexit betrayal. So why don't Labour figures just go further? Kevin, what do you make of this deal? I mean, does it tell you that closer ties with the EU is just pretty much inevitable and Brexit is simply unworkable?
Not necessarily that Brexit is unworkable, because, again, I think there is a basic core of an argument of independence and sovereignty that you can go into an agreement like the European Union and you can remove yourself from it. So I've got no issue with the idea of Britain being able to make Brexit work, so to speak. Albeit it will definitely hurt us. I don't think that's in much doubt at all. But we could, in theory, make it work and survive and be perfectly fine. It's just that politicians obviously want to appear to be making the situation better, and that's why there was always going to be some kind of renegotiation at some point. This weird maximalist Brexit means the hardest Brexit possible is absurd, because that wasn't on the referendum. The referendum was, do you want to stay in the European Union or not? It didn't say whether we wanted to be part of the EEA or some other third agreement thing or whatever. We could have stayed in the common market or whatever. It's or the single market, I should say. So I don't think it's a matter of that. And I will give Keir Starmer one tiny bit of credit. And this is a very low bar to clear, but he did manage to clear it for once, that this was a thing he promised to do and then did. Well done. One promise kept, kind of, I suppose. He put in the manifesto a relatively bland statement about renegotiating our trading arrangements with the EU. Got a massive majority, albeit in a flawed system, but still it is the system. You can't go by any other system on that particular election. Got that mandate and then did the thing. Okay, that's fair enough, I guess. You sort of have to give it an opportunity to work. There was always going to be a give and take in all of this. And again, having to explain to the man children the stupid idiots of the right, that in any negotiation there does have to be a give and take, that you give a little bit and you get a little bit back. That's the way it always works. You can't have your cake and eat it. Brexit sold people the lie that you could have absolutely everything and give nothing up in return. It was the nonsense of, we hold all the cards. No, you don't hold all the cards. They're 28 member nations. We are one. That's it. Okay, you have to accept that and negotiate from that position. So I don't particularly mind the deal for the most part. From what I understand it to be, the freedom of movement thing is obviously another piece of kind of weird Brexit Red Scare nonsense. If under 30s find it a little bit easier to go back and forth, fine, whatever. But one thing it does sort of do is undermine this weird racist nonsense that he's been doing in the last 2 weeks to try and court the right. Okay, he sounded like a combination of Enoch Powell and the drunk bloke in the corner of the pub going on about how they have taken over, right? He's been crazy, Keir Starmer, tweeting out constantly about immigration, island of strangers, etc. And then comes out and says, oh no, but we want freedom of, well, not freedom of movement, but a kind of return to freedom of movement. And you see the fact that he's tried to win over the right wing, both supporters and the media, and look at this reaction he's gotten from this EU deal. He hasn't achieved anything but to alienate his own base with this kind of rhetoric. We saw that the front pages of those papers, as you pointed out, and the fact that that Reform voters have a minus 92% net favourability of him, and that's down somehow. I don't even. It's nearly 100% for God's sake.
It can go lower.
It can. I'm sure it will. Yeah, can it get to above 100%? I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah. So he's tried to sort of play this stupid strategy, and it's ultimately going to blow up in his face.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, isn't it? Because I think you're right. If we look at it culturally, he has sort of done the really, really extremist rhetoric on immigration. He quoted Enoch Powell, for God's sakes, and the EU is very much part of that culture. The right is very good at. I mean, I think the right is done very well to use the EU against politicians, because honestly, if you any sort of scenario you can think of, the Brexiteers will have an answer. So, for example, if people actually got behind Jeremy Corbyn's soft Brexit deal, and we had a customs union, today you'd have the Brexiteers saying, we need to leave the customs union, right?
Yeah.
We have a pretty hard Brexit, but they're just going to say, Keir Starmer is betraying you. And with this trade deal, which, okay, I mean, Keir Starmer's gone around the world. He's done trade deals with the US, India. It's only plausible that he's going to do one with the EU. They're once again going to narrativize it and say, this guy hates you. And this is the thing, like, he's not wrong to get a trade deal with the EU. I think it's fine. But you're right when politics is about narratives and stories rather than necessarily legislation and policies.
Yeah.
And in one instance, he's gone really, really extreme on immigration and then gone, in the eyes of people, pro-EU. And that's because they have no clear strategy here. And actually, I think as well, it's another example where when you alienate your own base, then you haven't really got anyone to fight your corner now. Because obviously, this sort of... I'm not going to say it's pro-EU stuff. It's just a trade deal with the EU. Maybe there's a youth mobility scheme in there, which I think would be good for young people. I know we're older than that, but for those younger than us, I think it's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
You want someone to rally the troops and stand behind you, but they're pissed off at you because just a few weeks ago you were sounding like Enoch Powell.
Yeah, exactly. He's completely alienated his base, and he's going to lose the next election on that basis, and we're going to end up with Nigel Farage potentially, which is genuinely quite terrifying. But going to the point that you raised there with the Nick Tyrone tweet, I would broaden that out. I think he does have a point. If the Brexiteers are going to scream blue murder at the slightest, softening of a position of hardest of hard Brexits, then why not go and do an actually sensible policy? Because they're going to react that way either way. I would broaden that out to the whole of government. Yeah. If you do anything vaguely progressive whatsoever, the Daily Mail are going to come out and call you a communist. It doesn't matter. They're going to do that. It doesn't matter if you try and placate them. It doesn't matter if you try and be nicey to them with your Enoch Powell sweet talk. It doesn't matter. They're going to call you a communist and evil devil man. You're going to nationalise the sausages, etc., etc. So do an actually progressive policy or series of policies, have an actual plan in place that would make the country better and infuse your voters to go and vote for you at the next election. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But no, Morgan McSweeney is just a right-wing so-and-so.
It's a case of a centrist dad who's also said he would support reform, so he's not really centrist, catching up on what those of us on the left were saying for quite a while, which is you're absolutely right. When you broaden it out, it can be to do with anything, right? Yeah. Taxing the rich, for example. I mean, you've got GB News people calling him a communist anyway. You might as well be a social democrat at most. All these policies that will, make his base happy and actually, improve the lives of everyone, regardless of your political persuasion. You might as well just do it.
Well, this is ultimately why Reform are doing well. Neither the quote-unquote left-wing party or the right-wing party actually represent their voter base. The Conservatives have promised low immigration for election after election after election and have massively ballooned it. So their own voters don't want to vote for them anymore. And you're literally to the point now where they're in 4th place in the polling. And I genuinely think with a good Green leadership, they might end up being 5th at the next election. They could genuinely end up being essentially wiped out. You're regularly seeing polling now that suggests they're going to be on 30 or fewer seats in any hypothetical parliament if an election happened now. And the Labour Party have completely sold out their base as well. So everybody is disillusioned with the two major political parties. And so just literally anyone, it's any piece of flotsam in a sea wreck, isn't it? Anything they can hold on to. And if Nigel Farage is potentially that, people will just go with it. Regardless of the fact that he's actually probably worse in many respects, he's offering something vaguely different. And ultimately, if it's a sticking 2 fingers up at Westminster, as we saw with Brexit, many people will take that option, even if it's against their own interests.
Precisely. Let's leave that story there because we've got still a lot to cover. But I do want to say, before we move on to our next story, we do have a lovely video to show you. For the last 45 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth from the working and middle classes to the top 1%. Billions of pounds have been taken from the workers and handed to the economic elites. In 2008, the world came to a standstill. The market had failed. Capitalism was in crisis. Yet 16 years on, nothing has changed. The bankers weren't jailed, the banks were bailed out, ordinary people lost everything. It's 2025 and we are now reckoning with a Labour Party that seeks to implement a Tory agenda. We face rising right-wing forces, more division, more misinformation. Yet no one in the mainstream media wants to talk about the real issue, the economic elites who have increased their wealth while the rest of us have become poorer. This isn't just a crisis of inequality, it's a crisis of democracy. The rich aren't just getting richer, they're owning everything. We are facing a global oligarchy and nothing is being done. Why? Because of our media. The same oligarchs who hoard wealth also control our press and now our social networks. This is why independent media isn't just important, it's necessary. It's why we're calling on your support. Turn Left is an organisation run by 5 volunteers working around our full-time jobs. Your contributions have already made a huge difference, whether by covering rallies, producing vox pops and interviews, or upgrading our equipment. That's all possible because of you. But we can do so much more. We can be far more ambitious. So head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, become a monthly supporter, or give a one-off donation. If you want to fight back against the billionaire class, then help us build a media for people, a media for planet, a media for socialism. Smash the oligarchs. Join Turn Left. So that's turnleftmedia.co.uk/support for a monthly or one-off donation. Of course, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. I'm also excited to announce that Turn Left will be hosting a space at the Media Democracy Festival in London on the 31st of May. Now, if you haven't heard of it, the MDF is a day of ideas and discussion on what is so wrong with our legacy media and what we can do about it. We will be hosting 2 live streams throughout the day with some very special guests appearing on the show. We will be revealing that soon. But as you can see, these are the list of speakers who will be attending the festival throughout the day. It's pretty good stuff. And then we've got 2 keynote speakers who are Sangeeta Maiska, broadcaster, and Green Party Deputy Leader Zach Palansky. The event will be held at the University of Westminster, so make sure you tune in to our first proper in real life show. It's exciting stuff, but you know what? We've been extremely busy. But let's move on. Labour are to put sanctions on Israeli settlers. Britain has issued fresh sanctions against Israel over its morally unjustifiable escalation of violence in Gaza and demanded an end to its cruel and indefensible 11-week block on humanitarian aid. Foreign Secretary David Lammy condemned the monstrous situation as the UN warns that 14,000 Palestinian babies could die by Thursday unless action is taken to ease the crisis, which has left civilians severely malnourished. He announced the suspension of trade talks with Israel, imposed sanctions on 3 individuals and 4 entities involved in the settler movement, and said Benjamin Netanyahu's actions were wholly disproportionate and utterly counterproductive. So note, these are not blanket sanctions on Israel, nor are they on government officials, the ones, committing the genocide, but rather they're on 3 individuals who are facilitating the settlers, and there is still nothing that suggests Labour will halt arms sales. Now, Zara Sultana asks why arms sales have increased under Labour. David Lammy dismissed it as clickbait. I just asked the Foreign Secretary why arms sales to Israel I'll start that one again. I just asked the Foreign Secretary why arms sales to Israel under this Labour government now exceed those under the Tories. He dismissed it as clickbait. There's nothing clickbait about genocide. He has Palestinian blood on his hands. So the UN has warned that 14,000 babies will die by tomorrow, and the government will still send weapons to Israel, won't sanction the monsters who are doing this, and still won't call it a genocide. Instead, David Lammy is dismissing genuine concerns as clickbait. It's sick. Kevin, how can we trust them to even do this, right, when they've increased arms sales despite proudly announcing they suspended a percentage of them? Words mean nothing. And this is just a case of too little, too late.
Well, this is nothing. This is absolutely nothing. This is going to have absolutely no impact, and it's designed to have no impact. We have David Lammy, a member of the Labour Friends of Israel, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, another member of the Labour Friends of Israel, 2 avowed Zionists, basically running interference for the Zionist entity. That's all that's taking place here. They are not doing anything functionally to stop this. These piecemeal nonsense sanctions and this stopping of negotiations around a free trade agreement. What possible difference is that going to make? Absolutely nothing. And again, it's designed to be that way because they want Israel to do what Israel is currently doing. It's so sickening to me. They're still selling record numbers of arms to Israel during a genocide. They're still flying at our taxpayers' expense flights from RAF Akrotiri to do reconnaissance on behalf of the Israeli government. We know this several times now over areas that those planes have flown. We've had Israeli bombers then target those areas. We are actively complicit. This government is up to its neck in blood. That's the be all and end all of this. And their response to this is basically nothing. It's to dismiss any criticism, as we saw with Zara Sultana or Jeremy Corbyn or any number of other people, including Tory backbenchers, people who have been members of the Conservative Friends of Israel for years, have called for much stronger sanctions, have called for a recognition of the state of Palestine, all of which have been denied by the supposedly Social Democratic Labour Party. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. I don't know why there aren't significantly larger protests in the street over this.
I mean, why do you think these Conservative backbenchers and some people in the Labour Party, at least on rhetoric, are changing a bit? Again, I agree with you. These are not strong enough measures. They're pathetic. But why do you think they're getting caught up by Conservative MPs? Do you think potentially some people have realised this is all on record? When the time comes, we could be prosecuted and facing jail. Do you think this is probably what's pushing these people?
I mean, in theory, they could they could face jail, but I think they know in their half hearts they won't be. I think they're looking at more the kind of judgment of history. They realise that the live streaming of the current Holocaust that we're seeing in Gaza, and indeed extended to the West Bank, let's not forget, it is there for the world to see. It's too obvious. We have seen 18 months of brutal genocidal slaughter, and now you've got people like Smotrich just openly coming out and saying, no, we're going to take over the whole thing. That is now Israeli state policy that they are going to take over the entirety of the Gaza Strip. This was never about protecting Israelis, as we know from the fact that they killed lots of Israelis themselves, the IDF, on October 7th. This is about land grabbing, as it always is, because that's the entire goal of Zionism, is to, bit by bit, the anaconda, just closes its grip constantly and takes more and more land, little pockets of land here, there, and everywhere, whether it's an individual house in the West Bank or whether it's this carpet bombing and taking over of the north of the Gaza Strip, or indeed the entirety of the Gaza Strip. That is all this was ever about. The idea that this was about defeating terrorism is ridiculous. They are the terrorists.
I mean, 100%. What I was going to say here is basically, you mentioned Smotrich, by the way. He's just openly saying, I mean, multiple ministers are openly saying that, look, this is just genocide, right? But when I was reading this story and researching it, some people in the media, obviously mainstream media, were saying, oh, this is David Lammy's strongest words yet. They're quite stern words. They're really, really not, though. I mean, the language they're using is still things like, this is counterproductive. Counterproductive. This is not counterproductive. This is slaughter and genocide. Like, use the language, please. I don't want to hear, oh, this is worrying. This is concerning. It's fucking beyond that.
Yeah, it passed that point. It passed that point 70 years ago, frankly, but it especially passed that point on October the 8th, in all honesty, given the ridiculous response of
I think they
Israeli
passed.
state.
Well, you could say they passed the point on October 7th because we know that they deployed the Hannibal Directive.
Yes,
Israel
absolutely.
literally killed their own soldiers, quite possibly killed their own civilians too. So even on the day, Israel's response wasn't proportionate. It wasn't just targeting Hamas and defending themselves. They were killing their own too. But they don't care, and they knew that.
Exactly. They could have had, they'll use the hostages as, ironically, human shields, of course.
Literally.
Because they could have had them back. Literally, a deal to return all hostages was put on the table months ago, a year ago, in fact. And they've turned it down because this was never about getting hostages back. This was never about defending Israelis. This was never about defeating terrorism. This was about the Greater Israel Project. This is about the Zionist entity wanting to do its cancerous work of taking over and spreading, because that's what it does. That's all that it is. That's their entire goal. Everything you have to understand about the way in which the Israeli government acts has to be seen through the prism of Zionist expansion, because that's all they care about ultimately.
And even for this, right, Labour are being attacked. I mean, some are saying the UK are turning on their allies. Prominent Zionist Jake Wallace-Simons, also known as Bold Wallace-Simons, was saying that this attack is unjustified and said that it's a betrayal of a friend to appease people, and I quote, who hate everything we stand for. So that's his words, not mine.
Well, hang on. Sure. Well, hang on. If we're attacking them, can't we just claim that we have a right to defend ourselves?
True. But the thing is, though, and he is obviously one of the most prominent Zionists, but no matter how pathetic Labour's response is, the Zionists will still cry foul.
Exactly, and that adds to the point we were making a second ago. If they're going to react that way anyway, and they do, the cry bully always strikes out, do something properly then. Actually do it properly. Be on the right side of history, because they'll respond to you regardless. And history will not judge you well. I think Keir Starmer and David Lammy, along with their Conservative predecessors, will be remembered in infamy forever for their involvement in this.
They will
this
be
will be
seen
one
as
of
monsters.
This will be one of Britain's saddest modern chapters. What a bleak, miserable, squalid, to use the word of the day, chapter in British history.
I mean, we are living through history and not a good period, and these people will be seen as monsters because they are monsters.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of not that I've ever been mealy mouthed, but I'm just sick to death of seeing this concern trolling, and the media are, they're so bad at this that even when they slightly call it out, it's like, well, these are strong words. No, it's not. Okay, there's a literal genocide going on. The media's been complicit. Almost every single politician has been complicit. So many right-wing the right-wing commentariat and the so-called centrist commentariat, Jake Wallace-Simons, Bold Wallace-Simons, is utterly complicit, and their name is going to be dragged through history And I cannot wait to see how they are seen as utter monsters, seen for what they are. And I
Yeah,
know we're on the right side of history. We'll get called anti-Semitic or whatever. But trust me, in the future, when we look back, they're going to say, well, we never supported it. Well, do you know what? We've got the receipts now. I mean, we're in a world now where you can't hide anywhere. We've got the internet. We've got video footage. You
yeah,
can't claim ignorance here. We
yeah,
got you.
yeah.
We fucking got you.
There's no denying this. There's no denying this whatsoever. It's been one of the most well documented war crimes in the history of the world, and it's happened over a pretty extensive period of time now. And if you're just now getting slightly concerned or a little bit angry with the way in
Yeah,
which Israel's conducting
it's not
itself,
good enough.
your hands are covered in blood and they
Yeah,
can never be clean.
absolutely. Okay, coming up to 20 past 8, so let's move on to our final story. We're going to keep it quick. Now, The Independent has blamed Keir Starmer's complicity in Israel's genocide on, and I'll give you two guesses. That's right, Jeremy Corbyn. So political editor David Mannix wrote a piece about why Keir Starmer had taken so long to push back on Israel. And look, when I was reading it, I thought this would be interesting as the mainstream media, seemingly are calling him out. But when you read on, it gets quite insane. Maddox drops an absolute doozy. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories suggesting Labour is being held back by Zionist interests can readily be found on social media, but none of this is true. In reality, Labour under Sir Keir Starmer has been held back by a sense of shame. A visible reminder of this came when former leader Jeremy Corbyn got to his feet to challenge Lamy. Under Corbyn's leadership, Labour became so immersed in anti-Semitism and so marginalised the Jewish community that the party has had to continue working hard to restore its reputation. Wow! So first of all, it's not anti-Semitic to say that Israel has an influential lobby. That is literally a fact. It has pressured Labour and many political parties worldwide on foreign policy. But Maddox here is suggesting that because anti-Semitism was so high in the Labour Party under Corbyn, which isn't true, Starmer has to be pro-genocide because of his apparent shame. This is wild. Kevin, I'm going to really want to hear your response on this one. We've had years and years of Corbyn derangement syndrome, but this has got to be one of the worst.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that Jeremy Corbyn is a socialist because he has been living rent-free in these people's minds for so long now. This is genuinely embarrassing. I thought we'd seen peak jam man derangement syndrome.
I thought we did too.
I thought it was over, but apparently it's long Corbyn, as it is. It's been living in the minds of these quote unquote journalists. They're not journalists; they're smear merchant hacks for so long now. It's interesting that he goes on about there's no evidence that there's a Zionist influence campaign here when David Maddox is literally writes for and is a member of a group called the Forum for Foreign Relations, which is not technically on Tufton Street, but is spiritually on Tufton Street. It is a Zionist right-wing think tank. He is the very Zionist influence that he seeks to deny. It's embarrassing. It's yet another smear. It's another smear. It's compound Zionism. They're saying the obviously ginned up Red Scare bullshit fear that we put into the public imagination is the reason why Keir Starmer can't do this thing because we did this thing. So it's like Zionism multiplier or something. It's very, very peculiar. These people are genuinely quite deranged about Corbyn. Really, the reason they went after him, and we know it was complete nonsense, of course, is because of his support for Israel. His opposition to the government of Israel, his support for Palestinians, and they can't just accept that. They can't just be honest and open about that. And so they have to lie like this. The reason, of course, the real reason why Keir Starmer supports Israel and will continue to support Israel is because he is a Zionist, beholden to Zionist interests. Both he and the Foreign Secretary David Lammy are members of the Labour Friends of Israel. I think there's about another half a dozen members of the current cabinet who are members or past members of the Labour Friends of Israel. He's doing Zionism because he's a Zionist. It's got nothing to do with Jeremy Corbyn. That's a complete lie.
I mean, look, if you really dissect that paragraph there, really think about it, you can see how insane it is, because even if you would accept the premise that anti-Semitism is really, really high under Jeremy Corbyn, you accept that premise, and then you also accept the premise that Keir Starmer goes, right, we need to build trust with the Jewish community. He's literally saying, right, so I'm going to support genocide because anti-Semitism was bad in the Labour Party. And this is me showing the commitment to Jewish people. So one, you're showing that, okay, Keir Starmer's a piece of shit because apparently you have to support genocide to show solidarity with the Jewish community. And number two, is fucking anti-Semitic by saying, actually, to show that you support the Jewish community, you need to conflate Judaism and Jewish people with Israel. Therefore, if you support genocide, you're on the side of Jewish people. Every faucet of that paragraph is giving me I've been left inside a basement for 6 months. I've been drip-fed piss water, and I've been eating cheese and biscuits. And you've got, scribbles on the wall everywhere, and you've just lost your fucking mind.
Yeah, no, it's genuinely very, very strange. It's not necessarily quite as bad as some of the other smears, like he was a Czechoslovak spy, or the fact that he wears a tie means he's ambitious and therefore he can't be prime minister. But this is definitely added into the pantheon of weird as hell Jeremy Corbyn derangement syndrome, and its illness. It's this is clearly one of the newer manifestations. It's very much the Omicron variant of Jeremy Corbyn derangement syndrome. And honestly, Maddox should be genuinely ashamed of himself. As Zionist lying bullshitters go, he is really up there.
I mean, look, there's a reason why media trust from the people is at an all-time low. British media is one of the lowest in terms of the entire EU. It's because our media is absolutely insanely broken. And it's people like Maddox and it's people like The Independent who platform him. This is the reason why we hate the media. It's so broken because it's insane. Yeah. And we talk about fake news all the time. Yes, there has been a new abundance of really obvious fake media, which has come from sort of MAGA and the right wing, absolutely. But fake news didn't start in 2016. It didn't start with Donald Trump. It's happened for decades. Yeah. The BBC has been hollowed out by Thatcherites, so now it's just pro-business. And you've got the corporate media, you've got the Independent, spouting shit like this. And this has been happening for decades. People hate the media, and they're right to.
Yeah, the media has been consolidated into fewer and fewer hands, and therefore fewer and fewer interests get a voice, to the point where it's now just all exactly the same. They're all in absolute lockstep, and the British people can see that, and they don't like it, which is why they should support independent media.
Precisely. Well, I think that's a good way to end it. So we're going to leave those stories there, and let's bring in our producer for your comments. I know you've been busy. I can see it on the screen. So, Lewis, how are we?
Hello, can we hear me?
We can hear you. Fine, let's hopefully viewers can hear you.
Oh yeah, that did happen last time, didn't it? I'm all good. It was a great show so far. I think the input's been fantastic, and we've had some wonderful, interesting comments. I just want to add something really quickly, though. John Pierce, who is a brand new MP, it was the new head of Labour Friends of Israel, because I want to talk about it quickly, because Kev brought it up, wrote an article in the Jerusalem Post about 6 weeks ago, and it was an opinion piece saying Labour Friends of Israel do not support the ICC arrest warrants. They do not support the restrictions of arms sales, and all that other types of stuff. And nobody reported it on in Western media. And I'm not doing this as a brag, but this is how far you have to go to get this reported on. I had to contact 2 organizations which I have contacts with just to get this into Western media, because nobody reported on it. And those 2 outlets, the National Scot and the Canary, both then reported on it. It just shows you.
Are you telling me that Zionists don't support international law? Because I don't believe that.
No, I think you might be wrong there.
Yeah,
it's just really frustrating, because this is how the lengths that you have to go to sometimes just to get things in the news, because of how our media is currently structured. But anyway,
it's ridiculous. Another example of that would be the fact that you've got a terrorist who's attacked the Prime Minister's house, but because he's Ukrainian and they're on our side now for a bit, that doesn't get mentioned. Imagine if he'd been a Muslim.
Oh, it'd be everywhere.
Yeah, it'd be on the front page of every story. We wouldn't hear about anything else.
Well, even as a guy from Leeds, the Crossbow Attacker just a few weeks ago, far
Yeah,
right guy, inspired by the Christchurch attacker who went into a mosque and live streamed it and killed 50 people, barely made it into the news. It was barely covered.
yeah.
And if that would have been a Muslim, very different
Hmm.
story. Anyway, let's start from the top with the comments. So, firstly, we got a lot of happy birthdays to Kev. So, happy birthday
The
to Kev.
whippersnapper.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to Kev. And another happy birthday to Kev just from a lot of our regulars. But moving on to the sentencing that you guys were talking about with, is it Lucy Connelly? Andrew Wilson in our comments actually knows somebody who was part of the 2011 riots who got 11 months for stealing a can of beer.
Yeah, exactly. They set the paradigm up. The idea that the legal system law is supposed to be blind was thrown out the window. They needed to throw the book at them, etc., etc. Political interference in the legal process. So, okay, when it's not people you don't like doing riots, the same rules apply. Get wrecked, lads.
I mean, the thing is, though, people are acting like this is Keir Starmer's fault and it's political persecution. But as Kevin's mentioned, like it's literally just the system that's been set up for a long, long time
Yeah.
with the Tories. So it's not
Yeah.
Keir Starmer didn't hand that sentence down personally. I don't like defending Keir Starmer, but I'm also not going to attack him just because I'm,
Well, they
partisan.
do this. They do this with his role as the head of public prosecutions as well, as if he was personally in control of every single instance.
Which is just not true.
Yeah, ridiculous.
But I think what I worry about in general with this story, because actually nobody's brought it up in the comments, so I will. The news of Tommy Robinson today, if everybody's seen that he has been charged with 2 new charges about threatening journalists.
Wrecked, lads, wrecked.
Did you see that, Kev?
I didn't see that, but I do
Yeah.
hope they keep his tiny little cell warm for him.
Well, this is obviously this is going to tie into the Lucy Connelly story, how these people believe that some people say she's a political prisoner, you've got some people saying it was too harsh, whatever, but this is going to obviously add fuel to the fire, isn't it? They're going to say the second he's about to get released out of prison, 2 new charges drop against him, 2-tier system, political systems being weaponized against him, and
Oh, good.
yeah, it's good. Like he should get justice for what he did. I found today the original posts where he did threaten those journalists, and they are very threatening. And they're going to use this though. And
Why did they
you can make
wait
jokes about it
until he was released though? Because obviously optics,
Yeah.
it feeds into it. But why didn't they do this while he was in jail and then just extend the sentence?
Yeah,
I'm going to be
that
completely
looks
honest and
worse.
say I don't actually have the answer to that. One possible thing is just like waiting for somebody to finish their sentence to continue the investigation. I don't know. Maybe more. I'm sure more information will come out about it. But even the lack of why this has happened now is going to continue to fuel the speculation of the far right. And Tommy is more powerful now than he ever has been before. He's got endorsements from Elon Musk. He's got his bigger following, and I'm a bit scared about like where this is going to go. I'm not saying the justice system should go easier on him, and I hope there's no malfeasance in this and at all. But the timing is awful, especially with the Lucy Connelly case. And now I'm just kind of scared about tensions where the country is. Starmer's quoting Enoch Powell, and that's all I can say.
Yeah, it's a worrying backdrop to it. But I just say to Tommy, stop being a criminal.
Yeah,
If you stop doing crimes, you'll stop with going to prison.
Anyway, so Jacqueline said perhaps she was hoping that a guilty plea would mean a lesser sentence. In some cases, it can.
I was reading that apparently that was the idea, that even the lawyer apparently said you're probably going to get a lighter sentence, but that always...
Well, if it's not a plea deal, then there's nothing guaranteed about that.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Yeah. It can be seen as, they're admitting guilt and they might get a lighter sentence. It's never guaranteed.
Yeah.
So... I mean, I think these are probably excuses to try and... It's probably what she used to try and get her appeal, which didn't work. But yeah, I mean, you can't... Maybe she didn't have a very good lawyer either, but you can't be like, hopefully if I do a guilty plea, I'll get a lesser sentence. You need to know that for definite before you do the guilty plea.
If it's a trained lawyer, it doesn't matter how bad they are. They would know that pleading guilty means you're pleading guilty. Like that's a very obvious. It's a tautology almost. Like it's the same. You know what that is. You know what that means. It's not like with out of court settlements and stuff where you say like, oh, I'll pay you this X amount of money, but technically I'm not accepting guilt for the thing, so on and so forth, right? Load of bullshit. But that's like, there's legal indemnification in that. Whereas when you're in court, you plead guilty or not guilty. And if you plead guilty, you're accepting guilt. That's just the fucking way it works, you know?
And again, in the context of the riots, that the way sentencing works under these circumstances is that, yes, you do have the book thrown at you and you are made an example of, because when somebody else goes to prison for doing what she did under, private circumstances, meaning you probably won't even hear about it in the news, they might get a lesser sentence. But the judicial system is there to deter people from doing these actions again
Yeah,
in light
I
of
definitely think
in light of public unrest. That's the point.
I think that was the mentality of the judge. He did want to make an example out of her. But
And-
that doesn't mean that she was right in any way or she's a political prisoner. It is true that when you hand these sentences down, it's not done in a vacuum. They will look at the entire case. They will look at the race riots, and they will say, this is someone who's not super famous, but she's wife of a Tory councillor. She has maybe some kind of following, maybe some kind of trust in her with a proximity to a politician. These things are taken into account.
Yep.
I'm not a legal expert though, so
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to
Yeah.
wait for more information to come out on this, especially written to Tommy. I saw another article come out today about someone referring to themselves as a woke lefty, but she supports Lucy Connelly. Everyone seems to have an opinion on this, but ultimately,
I will say I do think she was given a harsh sentence.
yeah,
But if that's
shorter maybe, but it's not.
it could have been. But not just that, but once you've been given that sentence, if you've pled guilty, I don't think you can really appeal that. I mean, you can literally, of course, and that's quite right that you should be able to. But realistically, on a kind of moral level, it doesn't really work. And secondly, you definitely can't argue freedom of speech. They pled guilty. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, and just to quickly actually add on top of that is the one thing that the right are obsessed with, but not in the right way, is obviously when it comes to whole Pizzagate type stuff, QAnon conspiracies, all the the establishment's full of paedophiles, which it is, but not in the way that they think. And when you see stories like Hugh Edwards and he gets X amount of time, and then you get Lucy Connelly. I'm not saying that they're right on both issues of Lucy Connelly and Hugh Edwards, but I think they're right in saying, why is it that someone like Hugh Edwards can get suspended sentence? What you got?
Yeah, exactly.
I think these are fair points.
Yeah, but it's not either Keir Starmer or indeed any individual person's problem there, and it's not even the judge's case, because I remember I was on this show where we looked at the Hugh Edwards case. Clearly, it was like the judge did the right thing given the sentencing guidelines. Now, it's clearly not morally the right thing at all. But the thing for that is you need to vote in politicians who are going to change those sentencing guidelines and change those laws.
Yeah.
The judge themselves, the legal system worked as it should do in both situations, given the appalling political situation they've been left in.
It's also the rights drawing up battle lines which are incorrect, right? Their battle lines are, well, Hugh Edwards worked for the BBC. The BBC's woke lefty, so he was given a lighter sentence. Lucy Connelly was speaking truth. She's on the right. That's why. The real battle lines is the rich and powerful and the elites, and Hugh Edwards is far more powerful than Lucy Connelly. So there's also that level of privilege to it. Now, again, obviously, this is down to the actual guidelines above anything else. But usually when you have a two-tier policing system, it's those who threaten power and those who don't, which is why JSO got far harsher sentence than Lucy Connelly. Yeah. Lucy Connelly got 31 months. Okay, we can debate whether it's too long or not, but she was inciting violence, and violence of the specifics, which was burning hotels down with refugee children inside it. That is what happened. Now, thankfully, no one was hurt and the hotels weren't burnt down, but there was attempted arson, right? Compare that to, hi, we're just on a Zoom call and we're going to discuss where we can peacefully protest the planet being burnt to death, right? These are clearly two-tier, but it's the real two-tier is your proximity to power. But the right wing, what they do is they say, no, the richest in society are on our side. It's the scroungers. It's the queer people. It's, black and brown people. It's Muslims. They want to divide you culturally, which is very fascistic, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to jump onto something else, idiosyncrasy,
Much appreciated. Thank
I
you.
can't pronounce it. Yeah, gave us 10 lift memberships. They did add another comment further down asking if Helena comes on the show, but I can't find the comment now. And if this is your first time, idiosyncrasy, welcome. But yeah, Helena is on the show very regularly.
Yes.
Okay, on to I couldn't find the comment that they put. I think this is referring to the Americans who were arrested in the US protesting, arresting Holocaust survivors on pro-Palestine demos, not a
Well,
peep.
not just in America, in Germany. Yeah, we've had Holocaust survivors being arrested
I
there.
think
It's
it might have
ridiculous.
been when I quickly brought up Kneecap.
Yeah.
Although they
Okay.
weren't at a demo, but yes. But that's happened. I mean, I know Kneecap weren't Holocaust survivors, but like I said that story, and then this comment came up. So, but yeah, it's happened. It's happened in Germany, definitely
Well,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. It's the point of like, whose freedom of speech do you
Yeah,
support? You know?
exactly. And then ultimately, when you arrest people on this, you can have. Well, there are many Holocaust survivors who see there's a current Holocaust going on and they want to protest it. So eventually, you're going to get victims of it
Yeah.
in order to defend the state of Israel. It's kind of like Israeli ministers, backdoor behind the scenes saying, "Well, fuck the hostages or the family of the hostages. Fuck them. We want to obliterate Hamas, which is
Mm,
Palestine." But they tell us, "Oh no, it's all about the hostages." But they, obviously not.
yeah. Well, speaking of hostages, let's jump onto sausages. Communist sausages sound fantastic, by the way.
They do sound pretty
Um,
good.
Release the sausages.
Release the sausages. Also, idiosyncrasy put
TV
Timu Enoch
True.
talking about Slava.
He doesn't even
But
have the
obviously,
charisma with the fascist talking points.
True.
oh, also as well, what's his face? Is it what's his name? The Holocaust survivor, the Lord. Is it Alf Dubs? Is his
Yeah,
name?
Lord Alf Dubs. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was on the newsagents after the Enoch Powell speech, which is again a weird thing to say. And he said that he was asked, was the language similar to Enoch Powell? And he said, yeah, he was like pro reducing immigration and stuff like that, but he still agreed. A
Mm.
Holocaust survivor who escaped Nazi Germany and came to this country agrees
He'll get
that
called woke
it was
lefty
it
by
was.
GB News, though, won't he?
Yeah. Um, Okay, on to the next one. We have people in Britain seem to not understand that the US is not going to provide for Europe's security anymore. Those days are gone and over. I think John Stitch is an American. Um, don't know. I think
Well,
it's related to the EU
well, I mean,
conversation.
I think it's related to because we didn't bring it up because there's so much to talk about. But there is, I mean, Labour ministers have been proudly saying like, "Oh, look, we've got so much defence contractors," or allowing the EU to buy our contracts with this EU trade deal.
Yeah.
So basically, there's going to be a lot of money going to and from the EU when it comes to defence. Um, and I think there's a big question, and it kind of relates to what Zach Polanski was saying. And by the way, he was sort of stitched up about this NATO thing. He didn't announce it; it was just sort of an offhanded comment, which got blown up. But obviously, him saying we can't trust Trump, we need to rethink our military alliances, and maybe we need to have a sort of a stronger security alliance with the EU or Europe. Um, I mean,
I
yes. I
think
mean, who knows what's happening with the US?
And I think it's just worth noting again, just to point out to the stupid Americans who talk about, okay, we don't have to defend Europe anymore. They don't understand what they get from the relationship of the military police state of the world, which is the US. And the fact that they can assert their influence everywhere around the world allows them to do things like having the dollar be basically, the financial transaction currency, the petrodollar, all of these things. You get money, power, and influence out of you having military bases in Europe. It's not just, oh, well, you're doing a favor for Europe. You guys are imperialists. It's a military police state, and you use that to exert your power all over the world. And if you don't have that anymore, then we're not going to work with you anymore. And that's what countries are doing. That's why when the EU signed up that, how much was the deal worth? The original military deal, like hundreds of billions of dollars. They've specifically excluded any US companies because America is unreliable.
Mm.
Yeah.
Moving on to Lammy. So Jacqueline said, "Did all this happen before Lammy's exchange with Zara Sultana in Parliament or after?" This was during the actual exchange. I watched it to Jacqueline, and when he was saying it was clickbait, he was referring to the National Scots reporting on arms sales to Israel. And National Scot posted a video on social media, and they were not very happy with Lammy's comments.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Anything from you guys?
David Lammy can go fuck himself.
Pretty
we
much.
did the analysis earlier. We can just say that he is a terrible, spineless
Absolute prick.
person. He jumps on any popular movement. You know, he was a Corbynista when Jeremy Corbyn was leader, and now he's
Have we thought about buying him a couple of dinners? It might change him.
He might do. And that's the thing, he's that fucking easy that he blows with the wind, and now he's got his face so far up Keir Starmer's ass that I'm genuinely, I don't know how he's not ashamed of himself, not just over his political positions, but just how easily he can bend to political will. Yeah. He's a complete chameleon, and it's utterly embarrassing. And I think there's no one who does it so obvious than Lammy.
Yes.
And having watched the exchange as well, I got really pissed off at one point when he was shouting back at Priti Patel. And just to remind everyone, she was fired for having secret meetings with Israel. Just like to bring that up whenever I can. Lammy said to the Tories,
but don't you suggest that there is a Zionist influence on British government?
Yeah, don't you dare!
Outrageous.
What's that? Priti Patel used to work for Weber Shandwick, and so did Luke Akehurst. Oh, coincidence. Anyway. Yeah, so Lammy turned around to the Tories and Priti Patel specifically and said, I am taking a moral stance on this, and they didn't. And he also said, I am proud of my record on this issue. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding? Anyway. I
can only repeat, David Lammy, go fuck yourself.
Pretty much. Surely they'll do time at this point. The evidence stacks up more than Tony Blair, surely.
Yeah, but then Tony Blair, he should be in The Hague, and with all the evidence, he's evaded it. He's never going to jail. He's too powerful. So yeah. I don't think any of these people will face justice. Politicians and people in power often don't. So they will go down in the history books as disgusting, vile monsters who supported this, who supported babies being blown up. That is what they supported. I'm sorry, but they did, and they have, and they will, and they continue to do. Will they face justice? No. I hope I'm wrong.
Maybe
wrong.
Maybe Tony Blair's going to use AI to avoid his place in hell.
Well, just to point out how saying killing babies isn't anti-Semitic, there's a big scandal in Israel right now where the leader of the Democrats literally got up yesterday during a speech and says that Israel has got into the hobby of killing babies as a hobby, and it's caused a big outrage. So,
he's not wrong.
If the leader of a political party in Israel is saying it, then surely it can't be anti-Semitic.
Okay, Jim, but if that's in the Knesset, did they take time out from yet another discussion of how grey it is to rape prisoners, or what?
Oh no, but today in the Knesset they dragged out the Arab Jewish leader for calling out the genocide. So
the only democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah. Anyway, Jim Spreek brought up the Eurovision. Israel's next Eurovision act is just going to be that arsehole from the World Cup saying no politics here.
no politics here. Yeah, but you know what you do? You say free Palestine.
Yeah. I shared this in the last show, but just to remind everyone, the Israeli government are currently trying to sell off their public broadcaster because they don't like the coverage that the government has got from them. So if Israel do sell off their public broadcaster, they will no longer be eligible to be a part of Eurovision.
And then they'll call Eurovision anti-Semitic, though.
Yeah. Well, we had some lovely comments about Jeremy Corbyn in light of The Independent blaming him. So Andrew put both of them. It was Jeremy Corbyn who originally expelled the Jews from Israel, not Nero.
Everything is Corbyn's fault.
And then followed it with Jeremy Corbyn betrayed Jesus and framed Judas.
True.
Very much so.
But yeah. So just blame Jeremy Corbyn for anything.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's
Jeremy Corbyn literally did the Spanish Inquisition, which no one was expecting.
If you want a job in the media, you just blame Jeremy Corbyn. It's so easy.
True.
So James just gifted 5 Turn Left membership. Thank you so much, James.
Much appreciated.
And me and my Motley Crew too just became a member as well.
Welcome to Turn Left.
Welcome. Guys, that's it for the comments. So So much going on. 4 news stories, lots of comments. Great show. So thank you very much.
That was a jam-packed show, but I think we've kept it really, really concise, bang on time, actually. But of course, as Lewis said, that is all we have time for. I do want to thank everyone who tuned in, and of course, I want to thank you, Kevin, for joining me tonight. Again, happy birthday.
And thank you all.
I bet you had a wonderful day talking about genocide and all sorts, and David Lammy.
I'm so rock and roll. Yeah, I spend my birthday talking about David fucking Lammy.
Well, I promise we will not try and put David Lammy on you too much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Also, I like this this comment from Jacqueline. Jam-packed, haha, very funny, Curtis. Get it. You're the funny person because there was no pun intended. But now I'm going to say it is pun intended because you're going to see the jam band very shortly. I just want to say as well, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. I want to say thank you again. I'm Curtis Daly, and I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.